what I'd say to you today is the only reason why I stand shoulder to shoulder with you is because I agree with 70% of what you say. Because repeatedly you have shown in practice what the SSP is about, what your principles are about, what your politics are about. And I'd say this to you, that 70% of the Muslim community would rather back you if they heard what you had to say than back Mohammed Sawa, who votes for the terrorist acts, who stands shoulder to shoulder with Tony Blair and goes into another thing down the street. With a mission from God. God told me, George, go and fight these terrorists in Afghanistan, so I did. Then God told me, George, go and end the tyranny in Iraq, so I did. And now again I feel God's words coming to me, go and get the Palestinians their state and Israel's security, peace in the Middle East, and by God, I'm going to do it. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what you thought, but I've heard a great deal of nonsense in my years as a criminal defence lawyer. I've met with a number of clients, some of them very sad cases, some of them who've told me that they hear voices in their head and that they've been told to commit mass murder. And I know what the response is normally of the criminal justice system. It's to section them because they're declared mad, because they're declared dangerous, and to give them what they euphemistically is told clear in the community, yet we have the most powerful man in the world, on the planet, claiming to hear these voices in his head and claiming that gives him justification to go and invade countries. The bombing of innocent people in Baghdad, in Jenin, in Kabul, in the name of God, is equally barbaric to the bombings of innocent people in New York, in Madrid, or in London. There is absolutely no session, and I hope you don't bottle me, and I hope you don't throw abuse at me. But I would say to you first of all that I'm not standing here as a member, and I'm not joining the SSP, but I'll say yet, as a pointer to that, but what I'd say is that I stand here both as a friend and as a comrade, but I will say that I remember growing up as a child that many of you, as myself, will have been taught at school that learning history was a history of great men, of kings, of emperors, of generals. We learnt about Cleopatra bathing in milk, but we were never taught how many children died as a result of malnutrition for the lack of milk. We were told about Napoleon going to Russia in 1812, but we weren't told about thousands and thousands of Russian peasants and French peasants who died in uniform as a result. I was told as a child that because of William Wilberforce, slavery was abolished, but I was never told that it was a black freed slave that led the biggest slave army on the planet on this earth, that caused more losses to the British and the French than the Napoleonic Wars. I was not taught the name of Toussaint Louverture, and as I became older, it became clearer to me when I became a socialist that what is significant is the actions of millions. History is a history of class struggle. It's a history of the oppressed versus the oppressor, of the rich versus the poor. And when we are told today that we are living in a democracy, it's a sham. Men and women in the street are expected to vote in parliamentary elections once in every 4 or 5 years, but to leave the rest of the power and the decision making to others. If a person votes 10 times in his lifetime, he spends, let's say, 30 minutes in his whole lifetime in a democratic exercise. Abraham Lincoln said you can't have a society half free and half slave. But our so-called democratic leaders expect the mass of people to live in a lifetime of slavery and to give us 30 minutes of democracy. And I believe that the SSP has an important role to play, more than any other political party ever has played in Scottish politics. But not just in Scottish politics, but in Scottish society, in British society. And what I would say to you is this, that thousands of people across this planet, millions across this planet, but thousands in Scotland, are looking for an alternative. I have not joined, and I know many other thousands who are looking to the SSP at this point in time have not joined because they are tired of infighting, personal attacks, sectarianism, and what I'm saying to you is it's time to leave that to other parties. The SSP can fill the vacuum. They should unite, they should go forward, they should lead by example. And what I'll finish off is by saying that in 1902, Lenin wrote that when a worker goes on strikes for wages, he's simply a trade unionist. Against the beating of Jews, then he is a revolutionary socialist. And he went on to say the Bolshevik Party is a tribune of the oppressed. I think that's a dream that the Scottish Socialist Party can aspire to. And what I'd say to you, comrades, is that this party has had difficult times over the last year, but there have been inspiring occasions over the last few years for the SSP. Many inspiring occasions when I've been proud to stand with you, comrades from the SSP, when you've proven yourself as principled class fighters. I remember how proud I felt when I stood in the courtroom arguing for bail for Mercy Akolo and her daughter, an asylum seeker from Cameroon. and when the doors were opened to her by a house of a Scottish Socialist MSP, Rosie Kane, when she was the only MSP in the Scottish Parliament that first opened their doors to Mercia Colo and provided an example of what socialists are about. I was proud when Shahzad Mohammed, a Pakistani man, and his family were attacked in Denniston by a mob, a racist lynching mob. Then they stabbed them and they left them for dead, and his family and Shahzad were lying in hospital, and the first and only political representatives to visit them in the hospital were Scottish Socialist MSPs Tommy Sheridan and Colin Fox, not Mohammed Sawa, not community leaders from the Asian, not from the mosques, but Tommy Sheridan and Colin Fox. And I remember how proud I felt when I stood behind the perimeter fence with the likes of Jill Hubbard, with the likes of Keir McKechnie and Francis Curran from MSP, and I remember for months we refused to blink, we refused to sell our right to protest at Gleneagles, and when on the morning of Gleneagles we stood at that perimeter fence, we saw in practice the power of socialists, the power of ordinary people, when the whole state was mobilised to stop us marching, and the Chief Constable went on TV and said we will not allow the right to march. Thousands waited all over the country, in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, all over the country in buses, and finally at 11:30 we had enough, and we turned around to the area commander, behind the Metropolitan Police and behind the perimeter fence. We said to him, if you do not let us march, then our comrades in their thousands will march in the US consulate, we will turn the buses around, and we will show you what people power is about. If you have 11,000 officers in the central region of Scotland to support Gleneagles and to back and to protect G8, then you will see what we will do in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, and every city in Scotland. And we were confident that we could take on that state machinery, and within 5 minutes we had our answer. The cops went away, they came back with an answer. The Chief Constable said you can march. The Chief Constable never let us march. We said we would march no matter what you say. And what I say is that we showed at that moment on the 6th of July what lifting our little finger can do. Can you imagine what we could do if we were truly united with the energy we showed in the run-up to G8? That is when as a party you have shown leadership. And what thousands are looking for from you is not just political representation in Parliament, not just political MSPs in Parliament. Jack McConnell's wrong. We do want our MSPs on the barricades. We do want our MSPs on picket lines. Want them taking on that fundamentalist organisation, New Labour, and I will close this point. I think for once I probably am on time for finishing. Rosa Luxemburg in 1919 said that what faces humanity is socialism or barbarism, and she didn't know as much as we know today. She didn't know about the real barbarism that we've seen in the 20th century and at the start of the 21st century. She didn't know about the gas chambers, she didn't know about Hiroshima, she didn't know about Nagasaki or about mass famine in Africa. She didn't know about a society where technology can with one finger press a button that will transfer billions of pounds abroad, destroying lives at home, destroying jobs, destroying employment, whilst another finger on that another button can annihilate 100,000 people just like that. For many years that word anti-capitalism was part of a vocabulary of a small group of revolutionary organisations or small groups of socialists around this planet. Now that word anti-capitalism is a part of the language of billions, and if you realise that, if you pass the test, then I think you will grow as a mass party and be a tribune of the press, and I think we need to all unite to build for a socialist future built on the principles of justice and equality and peace. Thank you, comrades.